able to get out and watch Pax throw a couple of days before Christmas, and really couldn't have been more impressed. He was in wonderful physical condition. I don't want to be cliche, but it was the best shape I've ever seen him in. He looked great. And physically, before Christmas, he's throwing in the low 90s with great plane and looked absolutely free, which, is that's notable. That's not a typical thing for a major league pitcher at that time of the year. So very excited for what he produced. And then, even more intrigued when I would say in early February, it picked up with more earnest. The conversations became more frequent. And then obviously the last week or so before we ultimately signed him, what is now, I guess, the catchphrase, we got into serious talks with James Paxton, I guess those 6 or 7 days before ultimately bringing him in.
All right, next question, Ryan Divish.
Jerry, Scott mentioned he was worried that Pax threw so well with all those teams there that you guys might not have a shot. Was that your kind of feeling as well? And really, when you add a front top of the rotation starter, a frontline starter to this, I would imagine just bumps everybody down, makes you a little bit deeper in that way.
It does. And, to answer your first question, sure. I mean, James threw the ball so well when we were there in December. And, if I were ballparking, I would say there were about 20 teams there to see it. And knowing a lot of people in the scouting world, that people sent their best evaluators to come watch him throw. And my guess is that they saw the same thing that we saw. But, again, our impression is going to be a little bit different because our level of trust in James, knowing his work ethic, knowing how much James invests in his preparation is, something that we have a more intimate understanding of than most teams. So, we may have walked out of there with more comfort than any other team, truly. So the fact that he landed in a space from a contract perspective that we felt comfortable with was, I think, we were fortuitous. It was a little fortunate for us. What it does for everybody else, surely it creates greater depth, and maybe the single season in baseball history where that depth means more than it ever has. And adding James to the pitching that we have in-house gives us a great opportunity to continue to develop our young guys while we compete to the best of our ability.
Next question from Corey Brock.
Jerry, I'm curious, this sounds like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but was this a pretty easy sell to ownership? This is a fairly big ticket item, but I imagine there's the history of the player comes into this, the familiarity that you discussed, that he improves you today, and maybe if something happens at the trade deadline, cross that bridge when you get there. But was this a pretty easy sell to the ownership group to spend at this point?
We didn't have to sell it at all, actually. As in any other year, we are like 30 teams operating with a payroll budget, and we were able to manage this within our payroll budget. Having said that, one or multiple of our owners or executive level group has checked in to see what James' market looked like throughout the offseason, because just like James has always been popular with our fans and a productive pitcher for us for a number of years. He's a known commodity. It is a top of the rotation type starter when healthy, and we believe he is. And our owners, as a result, were consistently checking in, because when you play in one place for as long as James has, you build relationships. And I think the general consensus was that this was a good move for us if we could manage within the confines of our budget, and we were able to do that.
Next question, Shannon Dreher.
Jerry, fully realizing that you wouldn't tip your hand at the very beginning, but when you talked about off-season needs quite consistently as bullpen, maybe left-handed bat, and if we could do something with starting pitching, we would do something with starting pitching. How confident were you that you could land this type of arm? And was it a matter of getting this type of arm versus possibly somebody that would be competing for a spot or perhaps a swing role? And what kind of difference does that make that you did get that kind of arm?
Well, And this back to Ryan's question from earlier, we didn't really think that it was a high likelihood that we were going to be able to score the top impact type starting pitcher. That being said, and as was laid out earlier, we were exhaustive in chasing the right addition to our lineup. We just fell short at every turn. And, we had a series of targets, each of which we thought were ideal fits. And when we put them in an order that we thought best represented the way we saw that player, and then we tried to go out and get them. And, in some of those cases, actually in all of those cases, we offered multi-year contracts that seemed to fit what we were trying to do, not just for 2021, but for 2022 and potentially beyond. And so we were aggressive in that market. We just failed to bring in the offensive piece we were looking to add. And once we realized that the best fits for us were off the board, we turned our attention, all right, what's the most impact we can make? And, and because we stayed tethered to James through the offseason and not knowing where his market would end up, and I'm sure James will share this, one of the big benefits is how much James wanted to play in Seattle. I don't think there's any question that this is, we were the benefactors of some form of hometown discount on this. And, he wants to be a Mariner. He wants to be here. And, that was I guess that pushed this along quite a bit and allowed us to access a pitcher who we think, the talent that he brings to the table fits us perfectly. And, to get an upside season from James would be, a huge boost for this team and in the development of our younger players who now aren't under quite the same pressure.
Next question, Tim Booth.
Jerry, I'm wondering what your impressions were of James when you saw him pitch for those 2 seasons in New York, and were the injuries from last year? Do you see those as a long-term concern, or see him more as a one-off kind of thing that he had to work through?
I think the injuries are more of a one-off, but any injury, you compound enough injuries over time and they become, more of a concern. But, Pax has always had smaller issues that have taken him back. Obviously, the back issue that he experienced, and I don't think this is news to anybody. He, as a pending free agent with a team that had a chance to win the World Series on opening day of 2020, he rushed back. He rushed back to the mound, and it was probably not ideal for his own, good benefit, what have you. So, we feel like it was more a one-off. We don't think that there's a huge concern as we move into 2021, but I can't promise you that. We understand that there's always risk with players and injury. That being said, we were thrilled to bring him on. I can't say that I've had much occasion to watch any more than highlights from Pax pitching in New York because we were watching ourselves play. But as it works out, we've watched enough video, especially over the course of preparing for this free agent season. And we always have scouts that are either pouring through video or watching games live. So we're certainly not short on knowing what's coming out of James' hand, how he's moving, and his overall physical shape. And like I said, we were thrilled with what we saw in December and really looking forward to seeing what it looks like here in February and March.
Next question, Ryan Divish.
Jerry, Scott mentioned some guys maybe being delayed. Is there any concern that these could be extensive delays on visas or anything like that? Or do you think you'll get them in? I know it's a longer spring training, but any major concerns on that?
No, we think actually the only delays we've experienced so far are going to be resolved here in the next couple of days. I think we have 3 pitchers that have yet to report, and we're anticipating having 2 of them arrive as early as tomorrow, and the third arriving before the weekend's through. The third being Rafael Montero, but we still have to cross that bridge. Obviously, winter weather and visa issues slowed a couple of guys down, but we don't think it's a big issue.
Also, just want to follow up. You signed some relievers with some big league experience to minor league deals. JT Chargois, Guerrero, and these are guys that probably have a decent chance of making your team, don't they?
Sure, you could throw Drew Steckenrider, Matt McGill, and we've always been pretty aggressive in the market of bringing minor league contracted guys in to compete for major league spots, and we've had a fair bit of success in doing that. And that's a talented group. Matt McGill has had good big league success, and he's done it here in Seattle. And Drew Steckenrider for 2 years was a real stalwart as a setup guy for the Marlins before experiencing injury of his own. And JT Chargois, we have always thought it's an impact breaking ball, and his challenge has just been staying healthy. So it's a really talented group, and I think that there is at least the potential for one or maybe more of that group to make our bullpen to start the 21 season.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Great. Pax comes back to a team that he's familiar with, but that looks a lot different than the one he left 2 years ago. He's since gone on and, played for a pennant contending team. How valuable can that experience be for some of your young pitching prospects as well?
That's huge, and when I talked to James on Saturday night, and I said to him, it's going to be a very different feel for you when you walk in, as opposed to the clubhouse and the team that you left in 2018. It's a different vibe here, and he knows that. James has close relationships with Marco Gonzalez, with Taijuan Walker. He's got his finger on the pulse of what we're doing, and as much as he was playing for the Yankees, I'm sure he was equally as in tune with the Mariners to a degree. And it is a little bit different. And the fact that we're getting back a mature veteran who's got a presence, one of the things I'm most excited about is he's now been through those wars with teams that go to the postseason and pitching in playoff situations, and what he can impart on our younger group as a result of those experiences is huge. And Pax is such a pro and easy. He was high impact as a mentor for Marco back in 2018, and I imagine that the combination of the two of them has a chance to really make a difference with a young starting rotation again this year.
Next question, Larry Stone.
Yeah, hey Jerry. When you were talking about your pursuit of a bat, it sounded like you were characterizing that in the past tense. Does that mean there's nobody on the free agent list still that appeals to you? And what about maybe adding a pitcher that's still out there?
The answer to that, Larry, is we were hyper focused on one niche. We wanted a left-handed hitter who could balance out our lineup, who could ideally play second base, left field in a magical circumstances, potentially both. The more versatility, the better, because we didn't want to block the young players from getting opportunity. So, we took a stab at those. We had 2 players that were specifically good fits, and then a third who we thought was not as ideal, but could benefit us there. All 3 have signed elsewhere, and we're not likely to move on and pursue at least a major league contract with an offensive player to fill that void. We're going to go with what we have in house, and we'll stay open to any other opportunities that present themselves with the pitching staff. It's that's again an area where as much depth as you can compile, the better. It just keep on piling it on. We need all the pitching we can get, just like 29 other clubs.
Next question, Shannon Dreher.
Jerry, about how many innings are you looking at for the starters this year, and how have you kind of looked into and researched and kind of figured out what you want to do with that outside of the 6-man rotation?
It's interesting. It's case by case. We have one pitcher that threw roughly a complete season last year. It's Chris Flexen. And, I would imagine that coming off of a year in which he threw, I believe, about 140 or 150 innings between the regular and postseason in Korea, that he should be able to carry a little bit of a workload, or what would be closer to a normal workload. The rest of the guys, if they were throwing, 60, 65, 70 innings on the season, we don't feel like it's the responsible thing to do to run them out there for 32 starts and expect 6+ innings per start and accrue 200 inning type seasons. we will be a little bit more measured than that. And I shared this with James the other day, and we will operate with a 6-man starting rotation. There may be times due to off days that we cut that back to 5, but we'll operate with a 6-man rotation. And our primary thought behind it is to preserve the health and well-being of our pitchers. That, in an era where teams are trying to find competitive advantage by throwing their starters for shorter lengths of time and just running them harder, we feel like our advantage, our competitive advantage, is by keeping our pitchers healthy and having our best pitchers pitch over the length of the season, rather than the potential dangers of running them into injury.
All right, that's all the time we have for Jerry today. We will now go to new Mariners pitcher, James Paxton. Questions for James? We'll start with Tim Booth.
Hey, James, welcome back. Kind of take us through this process and how it came to be that this was the best, that coming back to Seattle was the best option for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of teams interested in signing me this offseason. It came down to it, and I really thought hard about it. And I think that coming back to Seattle was the best long-term decision for me, and looking forward in my career and what I want to do. I want to get back to being myself this year. I really struggled last year coming back from the back surgery, and I'm comfortable here in Seattle. I love the group here, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Next question, Ryan Divish.
James, we talked about a little bit before, but how much did the back surgery affect everything that you did last year and trying to get back to compete at such a quick rate?
Yeah, it was tough. Going into summer camp last year, I thought that I was okay, but looking back at it now and looking at my mechanics, my back leg just wasn't getting off the rubber very well. And it was making my arm drag behind me, and everything was just moving slow because of that. And it actually put my arm in a dangerous position. And that's what I think caused the injury to my flexor. Was just my mechanics being off and not having my strength back to 100%. So I really focused this off season on getting my strength back and my core and my back, and did a lot of work on my mechanics, and I'm back to feeling really good right now.
When did that happen? Just quickly, when did
when did what happen?
When did it get back to like 100% where everything started to feel normal?
It was kind of a slow build this off season, getting into some exercises, working with the group that I was working with in Seattle, working out. We really focused on a lot of core exercises, a lot of back stuff, and it just progressively got better and stronger throughout the off season.
Next question from Corey Brock.
Hey, James. As a guy who was once I'll say younger pitcher in the big leagues coming up, and there were some veterans when you broke in, I guess maybe Aaron Harang, Joe Saunders, Chris Young, I believe, maybe in 14. Do you think you could provide some of those, lessons for the young guys? How do you sort of view your role as a mentor moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with young guys. I love helping them out, telling them what I know. I love learning from them. A lot of these guys coming up now have a lot of knowledge with the analytics side of the game, because they've kind of come up in that era, and I can learn from them, and I can also teach them about the big leagues and things that I've learned along the way. And it's something that I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to working with all the young guys here.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Hey, James, nice to meet you. Kind of building off of that, it's a much different team than the one you left 2 years ago. Personnel, objectives of where they're heading and everything. What have you seen from afar about the players that they've accumulated and the path that they're on now?
When I look around the clubhouse here, and only the pitchers and catchers are here right now, but there's a lot of talent, a lot of young guys, a lot of good arms. I think that there's a tremendous potential here with this team. And over the next few years, I think that, and even this year, we could surprise some people, but especially over the next few years, this team's going to be in a great spot to compete and get into the playoffs and then see where it goes from there. But I really think that this team is going places.
Next question, Shannon Dreyer.
Hi, James. Good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks.
You just talked about how things are a little different for you in the clubhouse. How are you different? 2 years in the Yankee organization. What did that do? Different eyes on you. What did you take from that as a pitcher?
I learned a lot. There's a lot of great people over there at the Yankees. I learned a lot from CC Sabathia, guys like Zach Britton, Adam Ottavino, a lot of veterans. I got to work with Jay Happ again, which was great, and Garrett Cole last year. Learned a lot from those guys, and pitching in the postseason was fantastic. That was a great experience for me, and something that I can share with the guys here. And just that pressure, extra pressure in New York, having that experience, being able to talk about that with guys here, I think, and prepare and tell them the things that I learned through that experience, I think will be very beneficial to us as a group.
Next question, Larry Stone.
Yeah. Hey, James, welcome back. Good to see you. What is your feeling about pitching in a 6-man rotation? You probably heard Jerry talking about it when you first came on. And 2, have you thought about the fact that you're now teammates with the guys that you were traded for from the Yankee organization, and how that feels?
Yeah, I've said hi to some of those guys. Excited to play with them. We talked about the Yankees a little bit together. As far as the 6-man rotation goes, I understand the goal. Absolutely. And Jerry and I talked, and like he said, I think when there's a lot of off days early in the season, I don't think that. Obviously, this is going to be their decision, but I don't think we'll be going with the 6-man when there's all those off days, so we don't get too spread out. I think that with the lack of innings that guys got last year, keeping people healthy throughout the season with this 6-man is probably a good idea. I would still personally like to get to that, at least 170 innings. I want to stay healthy and try and get to that mark. But and I think that'll be possible in a 6-man rotation. But the goal is to stay healthy for the entire season. And if we're making a push for the postseason, I believe Jerry has said that we will go with the 5 best guys to make that push.
Keizo?
Yeah, hi, James. Talking about your ex-teammate from the Yankees, Masahiro Tanaka, he had a really, unique decision that going back to Japan and the changing environment is such a big thing. Any player. So what are your thoughts on his decision, and what was your best memory with him?
Masa was great. I loved working with him, learned a lot from him. He's so methodical on the mound. He just picks apart lineups. So he picks apart lineups so well. Watching him pitch was a lot of fun. And him going back to Japan this year, I think that's great for him. Getting to go back home and pitch there will be a lot of fun. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him back in the major leagues at some point. But he was fantastic, and I really loved working with him.
Thank you.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
James, obviously coming back from the kind of weird offseason and the injuries, where are you at in your throwing program as you go into camp? And will you have any limitations? And, maybe where is your velocity at right now?
I'm feeling 100% right now. I've thrown 7 bullpens coming into camp. I've been throwing long toss and feeling really good with my mechanics and everything. Velocity, I'm not exactly sure where it is right now, but we'll find out here. And usually the velocity for me, the last few miles an hour come in real competition. I know even before I got hurt in bullpens, I would usually sit at like 88, 89. And the last time I threw a bullpen, I believe I was, in that 90, 92 range. So that's a really good place for me to be in bullpens right now.
Any more questions for James? All right. Thanks for taking the time, James.
Thanks, guys. Excited to be back.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. That's all we have today.
Adam, that's it? All for the day?
Yeah.
Okay. No surprises?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
You can go to the gym, Divish.
I already went.
Impressive.